I want to discuss what I would have done with Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So I think there are two problems with Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows in that most of the characters who died in the final novel were characters who were not very important at all. And they were just minor characters like Fred Weasley or Mikhail Grigorovich, or I think there was some goblin or something, or Ted Tonks. So they were just very unimportant characters who were just dying on the side. And that's a problem because those deaths are really pretty meaningless. And the deaths that were meaningful, like Remus Lupin and Dobby, well, those deaths were really unnecessary. And you can tell that they were just kind of thrown in there, and they're so convenient and they didn't really need to happen. Like, I don't really have a problem that Dobby and Remus Lupin died. I don't have a problem with that at all. But the problem I do have is in the way that they died. So Remus Lupin shows up for the final battle at Hogwarts and he conveniently gets killed by a Death Eater, Antonin Dolohov, and that's how he goes. And it's not even a big part of the book. And then for Dobby, he dies because they disapparate and Bellatrix throws the knife in and gets him last minute. It's just so convenient, and you can tell the deaths were just thrown in there to have some emotional impact. So the problem is the deaths that were meaningful were very unnecessary and thrown in there very awkwardly, and the deaths were executed very awkwardly, if you will, and the deaths that were not meaningful were just really not that meaningful. So here's what I would do, though. Let me go through this fast because my computer is running out of battery. Basically, what I would have done is in the Battle of Seven Potters, and this is my alternate version of the Deathly Hallows, what I would have done. Obviously, J.K. Rowling wrote it and she did what she did, so obviously I don't really have power over that. But if I wrote the Deathly Hallows, basically, Mad-Eye Moody would not die. Instead, Rubeus Hagrid would die, because I would have had Rubeus Hagrid go with Mundungus Fletcher in the Battle of the Seven Potters. And I would have Rubeus Hagrid get struck by the Avada Kedavra from Voldemort. Let me grab my charger, actually. So many distractions. My apologies. But let me put the charger in and hopefully proceed with no more distractions. And I hope you're watching and sharing and doing everything with this video. Okay, where was I? So let me start over. Let's pretend Coldest Topics wrote the Deathly Hallows. What would he have done? Well, it would have been mostly the same, actually, mostly the same, but there would be a few differences. So what would be the few differences? So let's begin. So the Deathly Hallows begins with the Battle of Seven Potters, where six people disguise themselves as Harry Potter using Polyjuice Potion, and then they go take the little trip and stuff happens. So what I would have done, and I hope you read the Deathly Hallows, because if you've never read it, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. But watch the video and share it anyway. So in the Coldest Topics version of the Deathly Hallows, in the Battle of Seven Potters, Mundungus Fletcher would go with Rubeus Hagrid, while the real Harry Potter would go with Mad-Eye Moody. And they would be flying, and Voldemort would find them, and Voldemort would shoot the Avada Kedavra killing curse at Mundungus Fletcher, who would escape, and then the killing curse would hit Rubeus Hagrid. And so Voldemort would kill Rubeus Hagrid instead of Mad-Eye Moody. Mad-Eye Moody would survive. Now, what happens next? Well, the real Harry Potter, Mad-Eye Moody, and everyone else make it to the Weasley Burrow, fine. And while we're at it, I'll also add that Severus Snape's Sectum Sempra hits the Death Eater he was aiming for, and not Fred Weasley. And basically the next events of the book would play out similarly as they did in the original version, except Ted Tonks would evade capture and he would survive and he would flee to a safe house. So Ted Tonks lives. And now in the scene with the Ministry of Magic, Corbin Yaxley would pursue Ron, Harry, and Hermione, who would have to go into hiding. And then Corbin Yaxley would make his way into Grimmauld Place, where Corbin Yaxley would find Kreacher, and Corbin Yaxley would eat the feast that Kreacher prepared for Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Corbin Yaxley would eat all the food with his Death Eater friends, and then they would try to get information out of Kreacher. And when they couldn't, they would Avada Kedavra Kreacher, and Kreacher the elf died, protecting Harry. Now, Voldemort, maybe I would have some Dementors find the Dursleys. So the Dementors would find Petunia Dursley, Dudley Dursley, and Vernon Dursley, and Marge Dursley, Vernon's sister. And the Dementors would perform the Dementor's Kiss on all four of them, Petunia, Dudley, Vernon, and Marge, and they would all have their soul sucked out. So that's what would happen to the Dursleys. I would get rid of them like that. Now, of course, I forgot to add, let me backtrack a little bit. While Harry, Ron, and Hermione are at the Ministry before they get pursued by Corbin Yaxley, they would stun Umbridge as they did and take the locket from her, but the Dementors would come out and they would do the Dementor's Kiss on Dolores Umbridge. So Dolores Umbridge would get the Dementor's Kiss and she would become an empty shell too. Now let's move forward back to where I was. Rita Skeeter would go back to Bathilda Bagshot to get more information, but Nagini would already be there, and Nagini would have already consumed Bathilda Bagshot, and Rita Skeeter would, of course, try to escape, but Nagini would eat Rita Skeeter. So that's how Rita Skeeter would meet her end. So already, this is a fun story that I'm concocting in my head. Now, we go back a little, or we go forward, I should say. We go forward, and we get to the scene where Hermione Granger and Harry Potter are at Godric's Hollow, and they get ambushed by Nagini. And so what Hermione would do is Hermione would desperately conjure Fiendfire, and because she knows that would destroy Horcruxes. So Hermione would desperately conjure Fiendfire, and that would burn up and kill Nagini on the spot. But the Fiendfire would expand and it would consume Harry's wand, and that would get destroyed. And then the Fiendfire, Hermione's Fiendfire, would also consume all of Godric's Hollow, and everyone in Godric's Hollow would die. The entire place would go up in flames, which would make Hermione very guilty, and that would be quite the character arc for her. And Harry would help her get over that. Now, Voldemort would go to Godric's Hollow, and he would be furious to find Nagini dead, because that's one of his Horcruxes. But what Voldemort would do is he would find a picture of Gellert Grindelwald and know that he should pursue him. Now, everything goes pretty much the way it did in the original timeline. Ron would come back, destroy the Horcrux, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, they get taken to the Malfoy Manor later, Malfoy Manor. And at the Malfoy Manor, Dobby would, of course, rescue Garrick Ollivander, Luna Lovegood, Griphook, and everyone else. And who else was in prison? I don't even remember, but that would happen. And Dobby would drop the chandelier and it would fall on Bellatrix Lestrange, killing her instantly. So Dobby would kill Bellatrix Lestrange on the spot. Bellatrix gone. And Lucius Malfoy would try to kill Dobby, so Dobby would kill Lucius Malfoy on the spot too. So Dobby kills both Bellatrix Lestrange and Lucius Malfoy. And Harry Potter manages to disarm Draco Malfoy, and Harry Potter would become the Master of the Elder Wand, the Elder Master in that instance, as he did in the original story. Now, Narcissa would fly into a rage at Lucius and Bellatrix's death, and as the group is escaping, Narcissa would throw the knife, and Hermione Granger would get stabbed. Hermione Granger would get stabbed by the knife, and Hermione Granger would die in Ron Weasley's arms. And Hermione would confess her love for Ron, and he would confess his love for her, but she would already be dead by that point because she would have expired, and that would be the end of Hermione Granger. So I would kill off Hermione Granger. Dobby would survive, but Hermione Granger would die. Massive impact. See, in my story, I actually get the characters that matter, not some side characters. Of course, and Hermione's death would be tragic, and they would have a little short ceremony with Bill Weasley and Fleur Weasley and Ron Weasley and Dobby and Harry Potter and Griphook and Garrick Ollivander and Luna Lovegood, and of course, they bury Hermione. They would just maybe cremate and bury Hermione, and of course, Harry would have his little talk with Garrick. Harry Potter would get information out of Garrick Ollivander. And then afterwards, Ron would disguise himself as Bellatrix using the Polyjuice Potion and the wand. And they would get Griphook's help, and Dobby would go with them. And Harry, Dobby, Griphook, and Ron would go to the Gringotts Bank, where Dobby would destroy the cup Horcrux with the sword, and Griphook would try to betray them, but Dobby would destroy Griphook on the spot. And of course, Dobby would save Harry and Ron, and the three of them would go to Hogsmeade, where Dobby would take them to Aberforth Dumbledore. Now, at this point, Voldemort would find out that Harry and Ron are hunting Horcruxes, and he would go berserk. And he would be so enraged because at this point, he knows the diary has been destroyed. He knows Nagini has been destroyed. So he wants to find out what else is destroyed. He knows the diary, Nagini, and the cup has been destroyed. Voldemort will find the Shattered Cup and be so angry. So he knows that 3 of them are gone. So what about the other ones? Voldemort would go searching for the locket in the cave and find that that's gone too. And the ring in the Gaunt home and find that's gone too. And so he would realize he only has 1 Horcrux left, the diadem at Hogwarts, and he would be frantic to go and protect it. So he would be heading over to Hogwarts, which Harry would find out. And then so Dobby, Ron, and Harry would go into Hogsmeade, find the pub, and then that's where Harry would have his little talk with Aberforth Dumbledore. And Harry and Ron would go into Hogwarts and meet up with Neville Longbottom and all the other Dumbledore's army people. And Dobby would go over to rally the house elves. Now, of course, the Carrows would still find Harry, and Harry would find Minerva McGonagall, and Battle of Hogwarts ensues, and it's a big spectacle. And I forgot to add earlier, let me backtrack. Yes, I'm backtracking a lot, but after the fiasco at the Malfoy Manor, Voldemort would not allow Narcissa and Draco to live. So Narcissa Malfoy and Draco Malfoy would try to escape afterwards, but Voldemort would find them and just kill them right away. So Narcissa Malfoy and Draco Malfoy are dead, completely dead. So moving forward back to where I was, in the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry Potter would find the diadem using the ghost's help, using Helena's help, and Harry Potter would destroy the diadem, and of course he would think that that's the last Horcrux. 6 Horcruxes have been destroyed. Now, he would go out, and the Battle of Hogwarts would be as chaotic, but with even more casualties than before. And Neville Longbottom and Luna Lovegood would be fighting, and Harry would throw the Sword of Gryffindor to Neville Longbottom, and he would fight, and Luna would fight, and the battle would be so intense that Neville Longbottom and Luna Lovegood would end up dying. They would sacrifice themselves heroically. Neville's dead, Luna's dead. Of course, Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks would survive, because Neville Longbottom would maybe take down Anton Dolohov while also dying, and then Luna Lovegood would die. But so Nymphadora Tonks and Remus Lupin survive, but Neville Longbottom and Luna Lovegood die, which makes Harry feel even more guilty. And then so now Harry and Ron would go over and try to find Voldemort. And meanwhile, Dobby and the Hustles are also fighting in this battle. Harry would go and find Voldemort in the Shrieking Shack, where Voldemort would be talking to Severus Snape, and Voldemort would kill Severus Snape because he thinks that Severus Snape is master of the Elder Wand. However, and then Voldemort would go away, and then Harry would would go to Snape who was dying, and Snape would give him all the memories, and then Harry would take the memories and go to Dumbledore's office while Ron Weasley goes to meet his family, who's all alive in this timeline. All the Weasleys are alive, none of them are dead. And Harry would go see all the memories and the truth about Snape, and then Harry would come out, and then he would go over to Voldemort, and Harry would sacrifice himself, and then Voldemort would hit him with the Avada Kedavra, and then the Horcrux inside Harry would be destroyed, meaning the seventh Horcrux. All the Horcruxes are all destroyed at this point. And now, of course, Harry plays dead, and he gets taken over to the Hogwarts. And at this point, the new battle breaks out with Ron, who calls for the Hogwarts people to keep fighting. And then so in this battle, Mad-Eye Moody, Remus Lupin, Minerva McGonagall, Horace Slughorn, and Kingsley Shacklebolt would all duel Voldemort, who would be more than a match for them though, and he would push them back. And that is at this point that Harry Potter would emerge out of nowhere, and then out of the invisibility cloak, and then Voldemort would try to shoot him with the killing curse, but the Elder Wand would rebound and kill Voldemort, and Voldemort would die. And then Harry would win and save the day, and everyone would be so happy, and everyone's hugging Harry, and Dobby's hugging Harry, Minerva McGonagall, Mad-Eye Moody, Remus Lupin, Ron Weasley, all the Weasleys, Horace Slughorn, Kingsley Shacklebolt, and Nymphadora Tonks, and everyone's hugging Harry and so happy, and everything's going well, and everyone lived happily ever after. And then years later, in like 20 years later, Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks would have a daughter named Tonk. They would have a daughter named Tonk, and that daughter would be doing pretty well. And Harry Potter and his wife Ginny would have 5 daughters named Lily Jr., Molly Jr., Hermione, Luna, and Ginny Jr. And they would send their children off to Hogwarts, and yay, all the surviving people lived happily ever after. But there would be a twist at the end. I would have like a post-credits chapter where Hermione's mobile parents would have broken out of their memory charm, and they would be wanting to kill Harry Potter. And I'd say Harry Potter would have destroyed the Elder Wand, completely just destroyed it, discarded the pieces. So basically the difference in this timeline is Mad-Eye Moody, Alistair survives, Dobby the Elf survives, Fred Weasley survives, George Weasley does not get his ear injured, Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks survive, Ted Tonks survives, Petunia Dursley, Vernon Dursley, and Dudley Dursley, and Marge Dursley all get kissed by Dementors. Dolores Umbridge gets kissed by Dementors. Rita Skeeter gets eaten by Nagini. Rubius Hagrid gets killed by Voldemort. Hermione Granger gets killed by Narcissa. Draco Malfoy and Narcissa Malfoy get killed by Voldemort. Yes, so... And of course, Dobby kills Bellatrix and Lucius Malfoy. Lucius Malfoy and Bellatrix Lestrange get killed by Dobby. And that is my version of Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows. I guess you'll never be able to unsee this now. You're welcome. This was a great story.